My name is Jessica, and I am 28 years old. When my sister Stephanie got into medical school, I gave up my own college dreams to support her. For 4 straight years, I paid $9,000 annually so she could become a doctor. I thought her graduation would be our moment of triumph together. Instead, at her celebration party, she looked me straight in the eyes and shattered my heart. Before I tell you how I turned this heartbreak into my greatest victory, let me know where you are watching from and hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you will want to see how my sister's perfect facade crumbled when she returned home that night. Growing up, it was always clear who the favorite child was in our family. My parents, Margaret and Robert, never tried to hide their preference for my sister Stephanie. She was the pretty one, the smart one, the one with the brightest future ahead of her. I was just Jessica, the responsible daughter who got good grades, but never quite measured up to my sister's accomplishments in our parents' eyes. Our childhood home in suburban Pennsylvania was filled with Stephanie's trophies and awards. My own academic certificates were usually tucked away in a drawer or hung in my bedroom, while Stephanie's achievements decorated the living room walls and mantelpiece. Despite this obvious favoritism, I loved my sister. She was 4 years younger than me, and I often felt protective of her, even when she was basking in our parents' adoration. Everything changed when I was 16 and Stephanie was 12. Our parents' marriage, which had been deteriorating for years behind closed doors, finally collapsed completely. The divorce was ugly and bitter. Dad moved out and eventually relocated to Arizona with his new girlfriend, while Mom fell into a deep depression, becoming emotionally dependent on both of us, but especially on Stephanie, her golden child. With Dad gone and only sending sporadic child support payments, our financial situation became precarious. Mom had been a stay-at-home parent for most of our lives and struggled to find decent employment with her outdated skills. She eventually found work as a receptionist at a local dentist office, but the pay barely covered our mortgage and utilities. Despite the family turmoil, I excelled academically. By my senior year of high school, I had maintained a 3.9 GPA and scored in the top percentile on my SATs. My dream was to attend New York University for business. I had even received a partial scholarship, though it would still leave a significant financial gap to fill. Around the same time, Stephanie was accepted into a prestigious pre-med program at University of Pennsylvania. When her acceptance letter arrived, Mom threw a small party, inviting family friends to celebrate. No one mentioned that there had been no such celebration for my college acceptance letters. "My daughter is going to be a doctor," Mom announced proudly, her arm around Stephanie's shoulders. I always knew she was destined for greatness. That night, after the guests had left, Mom sat me down at our kitchen table. Her eyes were puffy from crying happy tears for Stephanie, but her expression had turned serious. "Jessica, you know how tight money is right now," she began, twisting her wedding ring that she still wore despite the divorce. "With your father being so unreliable with child support, I just do not see how we can afford to send both you and your sister to college at the same time." My stomach sank as I realized what was coming. "Stephanie has such a special opportunity," Mom continued. "Medical school has always been her dream, and this program practically guarantees her admission if she maintains her grades. I was thinking maybe you could defer your enrollment for a year, work full-time to help out, and then start college next fall when things are more stable." I wanted to protest, to point out that I had dreams too, that I had worked just as hard as Stephanie. But the pleading look in my mother's eyes and the thought of my sister's dreams being crushed silenced my objections. "Just for a year," Mom promised, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "You have always been my responsible one. I know I can count on you." That year turned into supporting Stephanie through her entire undergraduate program. I found a job as a waitress at a local restaurant, working long hours that left me exhausted. Later, I added a retail position on weekends. Every dollar I could spare went towards Stephanie's education and living expenses. During those years, I watched my own college dreams recede further into the distance. My friends posted photos from their dorm rooms and campus events, while I served pancakes to grumpy morning customers and folded endless piles of clothes at the mall. But I told myself it was temporary, that my sacrifice would strengthen the bond between my sister and me, that someday she would appreciate what I had done. About 2 years into this arrangement, I met Thomas at the restaurant where I worked. He was a regular customer who always left generous tips and eventually worked up the courage to ask me out. Thomas was kind, hardworking, and understood family obligation. His own parents had immigrated from Ireland, and he had helped support his younger siblings while putting himself through community college. "You are amazing," he told me one night as I vented about my exhaustion. "Not many people would give up so much for their sibling. Your sister is lucky to have you." Eventually, I landed a better-paying job as an administrative assistant at a marketing firm. The hours were more regular, the pay was better, and for the first time, I felt like I might be building a career of sorts, even without a degree. Still, a significant portion of my paycheck continued to go towards Stephanie's education. Meanwhile, Mom never seemed to recognize the magnitude of my sacrifice. When family friends asked about her daughters, she would gush about Stephanie's academic achievements, then add almost as an afterthought, "And Jessica is working. She has always been so practical." No mention of how my practicality was funding her favorite daughter's future. No acknowledgement that I had dreams too. Just the implication that I was exactly where someone like me belonged while Stephanie was destined for greater things. Through it all, I continued to love my sister and take pride in her accomplishments. Every time she called home excited about acing an exam or mastering a laboratory technique, I felt a complicated mix of genuine happiness for her and a dull ache for the opportunities one had given up. I kept telling myself that someday it would all be worth it. That Stephanie and I would look back on these years with a shared understanding of what we had accomplished together. I could not have been more wrong. The day Stephanie's medical school acceptance letter arrived was genuinely one of the happiest moments of my life. Despite everything, I had never stopped believing in her or wanting her to succeed. When she called to share the news, I could hear the excitement bubbling in her voice. "I got in, Jess." "I actually got in," she squealed through the phone. "University of Michigan Medical School. Can you believe it?" "That is amazing, Steph," I replied, ignoring the customers waiting for their coffee refills. "I am so proud of you." Mom organized another celebration dinner, this time at an expensive restaurant that I knew she could not afford. I offered to pay, of course, as we toasted Stephanie's success with sparkling cider, since she was still underage. My sister's expression suddenly turned serious. "There is just one thing," she said, setting down her glass. "Tuition is really expensive, and the apartment rentals near campus are crazy. My scholarships will cover about half, but I will still need help." I felt Thomas squeeze my hand under the table. We had been dating for over a year by then, and he knew immediately what was coming. "How much help?" I asked, though I already knew I would agree to whatever she needed. "About $9,000 a year," Stephanie replied, not quite meeting my eyes. "Just until I graduate. Then I will be making good money and can pay you back everything." $9,000. Every year. For 4 years. It was an enormous sum for someone making just above minimum wage, even with my recent promotion to executive assistant. It would mean continuing to live in my tiny studio apartment, putting off any thoughts of further education for myself, and probably taking on a second job again. But how could I say no? After coming this far, after Stephanie had worked so hard, how could I be the one to shatter her dreams when they were so close to becoming reality? "Of course I will help," I said, forcing a smile. "That is what sisters are for, right?" The first year of medical school, Stephanie called regularly. She would share stories about her classes, her new friends, the challenges of anatomy lab. I lived vicariously through these calls, imagining what my life might have been like if I had pursued my own education. But gradually, the calls became less frequent. Texts went unanswered for days. When we did speak, Stephanie seemed distracted, always in a rush to get off the phone. "Sorry, I have to go," became her constant refrain. "We have got this study group thing, and I am already late." Meanwhile, I was building my own life despite the limitations. My relationship with Thomas deepened, and after 3 years together, he proposed with a modest but beautiful ring. We agreed to a long engagement. Knowing that financially we were not ready for a wedding while I was still supporting Stephanie. There is no rush, Thomas assured me. I am not going anywhere. At work, I had become indispensable to my boss, taking on more responsibilities that edged into marketing assistant territory despite my lack of formal qualifications. During lunch breaks and late evenings, I began taking online business courses, determined not to completely abandon my own education. My friend Alicia from work was the first person to really call out the unfairness of my situation. "Let me get this straight," she said during one of our lunch breaks. "You have been supporting your sister for 6 years now? And what has she done for you?" I started to defend Stephanie, explaining about her rigorous schedule and the pressures of medical school, but Alicia cut me off. "Jessica, I follow her on Instagram. Did you see her spring break posts? That trip to Miami with her med school friends? Those designer shoes she bought last month? Who do you think is funding that lifestyle while you are working overtime and living in an apartment the size of my bathroom?" I had seen the posts, of course. The fancy coffee shop study sessions, the expensive restaurants, the weekend trips with friends. Each image had felt like a small betrayal. Knowing that I was eating ramen noodles to save money while transferring nearly a third of my paycheck to her bank account each month. Still, I made excuses. Medical school is stressful. She deserves to have some fun. And you do not? Alicia countered. When was the last time you did something just for yourself? When was the last time you bought something nice without feeling guilty about it? I could not remember. As Stephanie's medical school graduation approached, I found myself experiencing increasingly conflicted feelings. On one hand, I was genuinely proud of her accomplishments and excited to celebrate this milestone we had both sacrificed for. On the other hand, I could not ignore the growing resentment at how she had seemingly forgotten my role in her success, how she had taken my sacrifice for granted. "Maybe after graduation things will change," I told Thomas one night as we lay in bed. "Maybe once she is a doctor and making her own money, she will appreciate what I did for her." Thomas just held me closer, not saying what we both knew. The sister who had gradually disappeared from my life over the past 4 years was unlikely to suddenly transform into someone who recognized and valued my sacrifice. But still, I hoped. Because that is what you do when you love someone. You keep hoping they will become the person you believe they can be, even when all evidence points to the contrary. The invitation to Stephanie's graduation came just 2 weeks before the event, a hastily sent text message rather than a proper card or call. "Graduation is May 15th at 10 a.m. There is a party after at La Maison restaurant. Let me know if you can make it." No mention of how important it might be to have me there. No acknowledgement of the role I had played in making this day possible. Just a casual afterthought of an invitation, as if I were a distant acquaintance rather than the person who had financially supported her for the past 4 years. Despite everything, I felt a surge of excitement. This was at the culmination of our shared sacrifice, the moment when all those years of hard work would finally pay off. Stephanie would be a doctor, and I had helped make that happen. "Of course I will be there," I texted back immediately. "Wouldn't miss it for the world. So proud of you." 3 smiley face emojis came back. No words, just emojis. I immediately requested time off work, grateful that my boss Amanda was understanding about the last-minute notice. "You have more than earned it," she said, waving away my apologies. "Take Friday off too. Make it a long weekend. You never take vacation days anyway." Thomas also arranged to take time off from his job as a project manager at a construction company. We booked a hotel room near the university, splurging a bit on a nicer place than we would normally choose. "It is a celebration, after all," Thomas said. "And you deserve some luxury after everything you have done." The weekend before the trip, I went shopping for the perfect dress. I wanted to look professional and put together. Someone Stephanie would be proud to introduce to her medical school friends. After trying on dozens of options, I finally found a navy blue sheath dress that was simple but elegant. "You look beautiful," the saleswoman assured me as I examined my reflection uncertainly. Very sophisticated. The dress cost more than I would typically spend. But Thomas encouraged me to treat myself. This is a special occasion, he reminded me. And you have been saving for years for everyone else. You can spend a little on yourself for once. In the evenings leading up to the trip, Thomas and I would stay up late talking about the graduation and my hopes for reconnecting with Stephanie. I just want things to go back to how they used to be, I confessed one night. Before medical school, before she started seeing me as an ATM instead of a sister. We used to be close, you know? I used to be her hero. You are still a hero, Thomas assured me. Whether she recognizes it or not. For Stephanie's graduation gift, I chose something deeply meaningful, a delicate gold locket that had belonged to our grandmother. Inside, I placed a tiny photograph of Stephanie and me as children, arms around each other. Gap-toothed grins beaming at the camera. A reminder of the bond we once shared. I wrapped it carefully in silver paper with a handwritten card expressing how proud I was of her accomplishment. Meanwhile, Mom called almost daily with demands about the graduation weekend. Did you get a nice gift? She asked. Something appropriate for a doctor? Have you booked a good hotel? We should all stay at the same place. Make sure you do not embarrass your sister in front of her friends. These are future doctors she needs to maintain professional relationships with. Each call left me feeling increasingly anxious, as if I were being set up to fail before I even arrived. Still, I remained determined to make the weekend special. This was the culmination of a decade of sacrifice. Surely it would be worth it. Amanda, my boss, surprised me with a small office celebration the day before we left. She had ordered cupcakes and a card signed by everyone on our floor. We are all so proud of your sister, Amanda said, handing me the card. And even prouder of you for helping her get there. Not many siblings would make that kind of sacrifice. I blinked back tears, touched by this acknowledgement that had been so lacking from my own family. The drive from Pennsylvania to Michigan took nearly 9 hours. Thomas and I took turns behind the wheel, filling the time with music and conversation about everything except what awaited us at our destination. We checked into our hotel around 8 in the evening, both exhausted from the journey. I called Stephanie to let her know we had arrived safely. Oh, you are here already, she said, sounding distracted. I am out with some friends right now. Big pre-graduation thing. That is fine, I said quickly. I just wanted to let you know we made it. See you tomorrow at the ceremony. Yeah, sure, she replied. Look for me in the front section. I am graduating with honors. Of course she was. After hanging up, I sat on the edge of the hotel bed and opened my journal. I had started keeping it when Stephanie first went to college, a way to process my complicated feelings about our situation. The entry I wrote that night was full of hope. Tomorrow is the day everything pays off. All the double shifts, all the missed opportunities, all the loans I took out to cover what my paychecks could not. Tomorrow my sister becomes a doctor, and maybe, finally, she will understand what I gave up for her. Maybe tomorrow we start fresh. The night before graduation, Stephanie had arranged a dinner with Mom at an upscale Italian restaurant near campus. Thomas and I arrived precisely on time. But Mom and Stephanie were already seated, heads bent together in intimate conversation. Jessica. Thomas. Mom waved us over, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. You finally made it. We settled into our seats, and I reached across the table to squeeze Stephanie's hand. I am so proud of you, Steph. I cannot believe tomorrow is the big day. Stephanie nodded, her smile tight. Thanks for coming. I know it was a long drive. Throughout dinner, Stephanie seemed distracted, constantly checking her phone and waving to people at other tables. She introduced us to a few of her classmates who stopped by, but the introductions were hurried, as if she were embarrassed. This is my sister Jessica and her fiancé Thomas, she would say, then quickly turn the conversation to inside jokes or medical school references that excluded us. I tried to stay positive, to tell myself that she was just nervous about tomorrow's ceremony. That once the stress of graduation passed, the sister I remembered would return. But as I watched her laughing and engaged with her medical school friends, while barely acknowledging my presence, A cold knot of dread formed in my stomach. This was not going to be the reunion I had hoped for. This was not going to be the moment of recognition and reconnection I had built up in my mind. This was going to be something else entirely. I woke up early on graduation day, my stomach fluttering with a mix of excitement and anxiety. Today was the day my sister would become Dr. Stephanie Morgan. Today was the day all our sacrifices would finally culminate in triumph. "You okay?" Thomas asked, watching me fuss with my hair in the hotel mirror. "Just nervous," I admitted. "I want everything to be perfect." Thomas came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and meeting my eyes in the reflection. "Remember, this is your accomplishment too. You helped make this happen." We arrived at the auditorium an hour early to secure good seats. Mom was already there, saving a spot in the family section near the front. She barely acknowledged Thomas, focusing all her attention on adjusting her designer dress and checking her makeup in a compact mirror. "Did you bring the camera?" she asked me by way of greeting. "I want good pictures for Facebook." The ceremony itself was elegant and traditional. The dean gave a speech about healing and service, about the noble calling of medicine. I found myself scanning the rows of black-robed graduates, trying to spot my sister among the identical caps and gowns. When they finally called Stephanie's name, I felt a surge of pure, uncomplicated pride. She walked across the stage with confident steps, accepting her diploma with a broad smile. Tears sprang to my eyes as I watched her move the tassel on her cap from right to left. "Officially becoming a doctor. That is your sister," Thomas whispered, squeezing my hand. "You helped her get there." After the ceremony, the graduates flooded out into the courtyard, where families waited with flowers and congratulations. I spotted Stephanie in the crowd, surrounded by a group of her classmates, all laughing and taking selfies. I waved, trying to catch her attention, but she seemed not to notice. Finally, I made my way through the crowd, Thomas following close behind. "Stephanie," I called, holding out my arms for a hug. "Congratulations, doctor." She turned, her smile faltering slightly before recovering. "Jessica, you made it." The hug she gave me was brief and perfunctory, nothing like the warm embraces we had shared growing up. Almost immediately, she turned back to her friends. "Guys, this is my sister," she said, not even bothering to introduce me by name. "And that is my mom over there in the blue dress." One of her friends, a tall woman with sleek blonde hair, looked me up and down with mild curiosity. "Oh, you are the sister who works in an office, right? Stephanie mentioned you could not go to college." The casual cruelty of the comment stung, but what hurt more was that Stephanie did not correct her. She did not explain that I had sacrificed my education to support hers. She just gave an awkward laugh and quickly changed the subject. As the crowd began to disperse, Stephanie announced that the graduation party would be starting soon at La Maison, an exclusive French restaurant downtown. "We should get going," she said, checking her watch. "I need to be there when people arrive." In the car on the way to the restaurant, Mom chatted excitedly about the ceremony, about how impressive Stephanie had looked receiving her diploma, about how this was the proudest day of her life. Neither of them mentioned my role in making this day possible. Neither of them acknowledged that without my financial support, this celebration might not be happening at all. La Maison was everything I had expected: elegant, expensive, intimidating. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, and waiters in crisp black uniforms circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. A banner reading "Congratulations, Doctors" stretched across one wall. Stephanie was immediately swept away by a group of classmates, leaving Thomas and me standing awkwardly near the entrance. Mom had found a group of other parents to chat with, leaving us completely alone. "Want a drink?" Thomas asked, sensing my discomfort. "Definitely," I replied. As we stood sipping champagne, I overheard a conversation from a nearby group that included Stephanie. "So that is your sister?" a male voice asked. "The one who paid for med school?" "Keep your voice down," Stephanie hissed. "She is not supposed to be here this long." I told her to come to the ceremony and then head home. I do not need her hovering all weekend. She is so clingy. My hand froze midway to my mouth. Champagne sloshing dangerously close to the rim of the flute. Clingy? After driving 9 hours to celebrate her achievement? After giving up my own dreams so she could pursue hers? You okay? Thomas whispered, but I was already moving toward my sister, drawn like a magnet to the source of my pain. I approached Stephanie with the gift box in my hand, determined to rise above the hurt and still make this moment special. She was surrounded by friends, including a handsome man with his arm casually draped around her shoulders whom I recognized as William, her new boyfriend she had briefly introduced the night before. Stephanie, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I wanted to give you your graduation gift. She turned, surprise flickering across her face. Oh, you are still here. I thought you might have left already. Left? The party just started, I said with a confused laugh. Here, this was Grandma's. I thought you might want to have it for your white coat ceremony. I held out the small silver-wrapped package. Stephanie took it with obvious reluctance, barely glancing at it before setting it aside on a nearby table. Thanks, she said dismissively. Listen, Jessica. You do not have to stay for the whole thing. It is going to go late, and I know you have a long drive tomorrow. I blinked, confused by her eagerness to see me leave. I took Monday off too. We do not have to rush back. Stephanie's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Look, I appreciate you coming to the ceremony, but your job is done. You should not be here. The words hit me like a physical blow. Your job is done. Not thank you for supporting me or I appreciate your sacrifice. Just your job is done. As if I had been nothing more than an employee fulfilling an obligation. Before I could respond, Mom appeared at Stephanie's side, champagne glass in hand. Is everything okay? She asked, looking between us. Jessica was just leaving, Stephanie said firmly. I was not, I began, but Mom cut me off with a laugh. Oh, Jessica, you do not know your place, she said, the champagne evidently having loosened her tongue. This is Stephanie's moment with her peers. These are important connections for her career. You should let her celebrate properly. They both laughed, as if they had shared a private joke at my expense. Around us, Stephanie's friends shifted uncomfortably, some averting their eyes, others watching with undisguised curiosity. In that moment, something broke inside me. All the years of sacrifice, of putting my sister's needs before my own, of believing that someday she would recognize and appreciate what I had done for her, all of it crumbled to dust. I felt Thomas's hand on my back, a silent reminder that I was not alone, that someone in this room valued me. I straightened my shoulders and fixed a smile on my face. You're right, I said calmly. Congratulations on your graduation, Stephanie. Enjoy your party. I turned and walked away, head held high, Thomas's hand firmly in mine. We collected our coats and left without looking back, the sounds of laughter and celebration fading behind us. In the hotel room, the emotions I had held in check finally broke free. I sobbed in Thomas's arms, the pain of betrayal washing over me in waves. 8 years, I choked out between sobs. 8 years of my life. $36,000. My own education. All of it gone, and she could not even say thank you. Thomas held me, stroking my hair, letting me purge the grief and anger that had been building for years. You deserved better, he whispered. You deserved so much better. As the tears subsided, exhaustion took over. I fell into a restless sleep, still wearing my navy blue dress, Thomas keeping watch beside me like a sentry guarding against further harm. I woke up the next morning with swollen eyes and a sense of clarity I had not felt in years. The hurt was still there, a dull ache behind my ribs, but it was overshadowed by something stronger: determination. Thomas was already up, sitting at the small desk by the window with 2 cups of coffee. How are you feeling? He asked cautiously. Like I have been a fool for 8 years, I replied, sitting up and accepting the coffee he offered. But also like I am done being one. We spent the morning talking, really talking, about everything that had happened over the years. About how I had allowed myself to be used by my sister and manipulated by my mother. About how I had put everyone else's needs above my own for so long that I had almost forgotten I had needs at all. You know what the worst part is? I said, pacing the small hotel room. I would have given her the money anyway, if she had just asked respectfully and acknowledged the sacrifice. I did not need grand gestures, just basic human gratitude. So, what do you want to do now? Thomas asked. I sat down on the edge of the bed, thinking carefully before answering. I want what I am owed. Not just the money, though that is part of it. I want recognition. I want consequences for how they treated me. I want to stop being a doormat. I pulled out my phone and called Alicia, knowing she would offer the perspective I needed. They did what? She exclaimed after I recounted the previous day's events. Oh, hell no. That is not okay, Jessica. Not after everything you have done for her. I know, I replied. I just do not know what to do about it. You make her pay you back, Alicia said firmly. Every single penny. She is a doctor now, right? About to start making doctor money? Time for her to settle her debts. The conversation with Alicia strengthened my resolve. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and began organizing my finances. For 8 years, I had meticulously tracked every dollar I sent to Stephanie, initially just for my own budgeting purposes. Now those spreadsheets would serve a different purpose. I called my bank and requested statements going back to when Stephanie first started college. I gathered digital copies of every transfer, every check, every cash withdrawal that had gone toward her education. What exactly are we doing here? Thomas asked as he watched me create a digital folder labeled Stephanie's Debt. Documenting, I replied. So there can be no argument about how much she owes me. Next, I called a friend who worked as a paralegal to ask about my options for recovering educational investments. Well, did you have any kind of written agreement? She asked. No, I admitted. It was a verbal agreement. She always said she would pay me back once she was working as a doctor. That complicates things legally, my friend explained. But a strongly worded letter outlining the agreement and requesting repayment can often work wonders. People who are starting professional careers usually do not want financial disputes hanging over their heads. With her guidance, I drafted a formal letter requesting repayment of the $36,000 I had contributed to Stephanie's medical education, plus the additional $12,000 I had provided during her undergraduate years. The letter was professional and factual, free from the emotional language I might have used the day before. I also scheduled a consultation with a financial advisor to discuss my options for returning to school. At 28, I was behind many of my peers educationally. But it was not too late to pursue the business degree I had always wanted. We should leave, Thomas suggested as afternoon turned to evening. There is nothing keeping us here now. I agreed. But there was one thing I needed to do before we left Michigan. I printed copies of my financial records and the formal letter requesting repayment. I placed them in a large manila envelope along with a note. Stephanie, congratulations on becoming a doctor. As you said, my job supporting you is now done. It is time for you to fulfill your promise to repay what you borrowed. I have included documentation of all funds provided. I expect to receive your repayment plan within 30 days. Jessica. No emotional appeals. No recriminations. Just facts and expectations. We checked out of the hotel and drove to Stephanie's apartment. I knew she would still be out celebrating with her friends, which was perfect. I did not want another confrontation. I simply slipped the envelope under her door and walked away, feeling lighter with each step. On the long drive home, Thomas and I talked about our future together. Without the financial burden of supporting Stephanie, we could finally move forward with our own plans: a better apartment, a real wedding. My return to education. I am proud of you, Thomas said as the miles rolled away beneath our tires. Standing up for yourself like this. It cannot have been easy. It was not, I admitted. But it was necessary. When we got home, I sat down at my computer and composed an email to my mother. It was time to establish boundaries there as well. Mom, I wrote, I love you, but I can no longer accept being treated as less important than Stephanie. The comments you made at the graduation party were hurtful and dismissive of the sacrifices I have made for our family. I need some time and space to process everything. I will reach out when I am ready to talk again. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then blocked both her number and Stephanie's on my phone. I needed time to heal without their voices in my ear, trying to pull me back into old patterns. That night, I slept better than I had in years. The weight of obligation finally lifted from my shoulders. For the first time since I was 18 years old, my future belonged to me alone. For an entire week after returning from Michigan, I heard nothing from either Stephanie or my mother. I had expected immediate pushback, frantic calls, angry texts, emotional appeals, but there was only silence. It was unnerving, but also liberating. I used the quiet to focus on myself for once. I enrolled in online business courses, officially beginning the education I had deferred for 8 years. The classes were challenging after so long away from academic work, but I threw myself into the material with enthusiasm. Each completed assignment felt like reclaiming a small piece of my stolen future. I also began setting aside money in a separate savings account labeled Education Fund, funds that would have normally gone to Stephanie. Each deposit was a statement of intent, a promise to myself that I would never again put my dreams on indefinite hold. Alicia and I met for lunch regularly, and she became my biggest cheerleader as I navigated this new phase of my life. "You look different," she remarked one day over salads. "More confident." "I feel different," I admitted. Like I finally respect myself enough to demand respect from others. On the 8th day after graduation, the silence broke. My phone lit up with a series of missed calls from Stephanie, which I had expected and was prepared to ignore. What I had not expected was her showing up at my workplace. I was returning from a meeting when I spotted her in the reception area, still wearing her white coat from the hospital where she had started her residency. The receptionist waved me over with an uncertain smile. "Your sister is here to see you," she said. "She says it is urgent." I took a deep breath, centering myself before approaching Stephanie. "This is not a good time or place," I said quietly. "I am at work." "You would not answer my calls," she replied, her voice tight with suppressed anger. "You gave me no choice." To avoid making a scene in front of my colleagues, I suggested we go to a nearby cafe. Thomas, who worked just a few blocks away, met us there at my request. I wanted a witness to whatever was about to unfold. Stephanie sat stiffly across from us, her white coat making her look more authoritative than I had ever seen her. But there was something new in her expression, a flicker of uncertainty, perhaps even fear. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, slapping the manila envelope down on the table between us. $36,000 for medical school? Another $12,000 for undergrad? Are you serious right now? "Completely serious," I replied calmly. "Those are the exact amounts I provided for your education, as documented in the statements. You always said you would pay me back once you were working as a doctor." "I never meant actually pay you back," she exclaimed. "It was family helping family. That is what sisters do." I felt a surge of anger, but kept my voice level. "Is it? Is telling your sister she does not belong at your graduation what sisters do? Is laughing when your mother says she does not know her place what sisters do?" Stephanie had the grace to look momentarily ashamed, but quickly rallied. "You are being overdramatic. It was a stressful day." "I did not mean it like that." "How did you mean it, then?" I asked. "Please, explain to me how your job is done. You should not be here," could be interpreted as anything but hurtful and dismissive. She had no answer for that. Instead, she changed tactics, her eyes filling with tears. "I cannot afford to pay this back. I am just starting my residency. I make barely anything." "You have job offers lined up after residency," I pointed out. "I am not asking for immediate repayment of the full amount. I am asking for acknowledgement of the debt and a payment plan." "This is insane," Stephanie muttered, wiping at her eyes. "Wait until Mom hears about this." "Mom already knows," I said. I forwarded her copies of everything. As if on cue, my phone rang with my mother's number. I had unblocked her the day before, anticipating this conversation. I put the phone on speaker. "Jessica," my mother began without preamble, "what do you think you are doing? Demanding money from your sister? After everything we have done for you?" The absurdity of the statement nearly made me laugh. "What exactly have you done for me, Mom? Please remind me." "Because from where I am sitting, I have been the one doing for everyone else since I was 18 years old. We gave you a home and education. You gave me a home until I was 18, which is the legal obligation of a parent. I interrupted. As for education, I never got one. I gave up my scholarship to NYU so Stephanie could go to college. I worked multiple jobs to support her. I put my entire life on hold for 8 years. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. We always knew you were the strong one, my mother finally said, her voice softening into the manipulative tone I had grown so familiar with. You never needed the help Stephanie did. You were always so capable on your own. Being capable does not mean I did not have dreams too, I replied. It does not mean I deserved less support or recognition. So this is about recognition? Stephanie cut in. You want me to thank you publicly or something? Fine. Thank you, Jessica, for helping me through medical school. Is that what you wanted? What I wanted was for you to appreciate the sacrifices I made without having to demand it, I said quietly. What I wanted was to be treated like someone who matters to you. Not like an ATM you could discard once you no longer needed funds. Thomas, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. Stephanie, do you have any idea what Jessica gave up for you? She could have had her own career by now. We could have been married years ago if she had not been supporting you. She took out loans to cover your expenses when her paychecks were not enough. She has been paying interest on those loans while you were posting Instagram photos of your spring break trips to Miami. Stephanie at least had the decency to look embarrassed. I did not ask her to do all that, she mumbled. Actually, you did, I corrected her. Every time you called saying you needed money for books, for lab fees, for rent. Every time you accepted a check without question. You asked, and I gave, over and over again. The conversation continued in this vein for nearly an hour, cycling through Stephanie's anger, my mother's manipulation, and my calm insistence on repayment. Eventually, the reality of the situation seemed to dawn on them both. Stephanie was legally an adult who had accepted significant financial support with the verbal promise of repayment. She was now a doctor, soon to be earning a substantial income. While I had documentation of every dollar provided. What do you want me to do? Stephanie finally asked, her voice tired. I really cannot afford to pay you back right now. I want us to sit down with a financial advisor and work out a reasonable repayment plan, I said. I do not expect the full amount immediately. I do expect recognition of the debt and regular payments once you are established in your practice. 2 days later, we met again. This time in a more formal setting with both my mother and Stephanie present. I had prepared a detailed repayment schedule that would begin with small monthly payments during Stephanie's residency, increasing as her income grew. This is ridiculous, my mother muttered as she reviewed the document. Sisters should not treat each other like banks. You are right, I agreed, surprising her. Sisters should treat each other with respect and gratitude. They should acknowledge each other's sacrifices. They should not tell each other they do not belong at graduation parties. Stephanie winced at the reminder, but remained focused on the document. These payments are manageable, she admitted reluctantly. But it will take years to pay it all back. It took years for me to provide it all, I pointed out. And unlike you, I was not making a doctor's salary. After more discussion and a few adjustments to the timeline, Stephanie signed the agreement. It was a surreal moment watching her signature appear on the document, officially acknowledging her debt to me. Not just the financial debt, but the moral one as well. As she handed the pen back to me, our eyes met briefly, and I saw something I had not seen in years: genuine respect. My mother's adjustment to the new family dynamic was slower and more reluctant. She continued to make passive-aggressive comments about my hardness and how family should support each other unconditionally. But I noticed that she no longer dismissed my contributions or treated my life as less valuable than Stephanie's. The most unexpected outcome of the confrontation was Stephanie's gradual change in attitude. As the reality of her debt settled in, she seemed to develop a new awareness of the magnitude of what I had done for her. The entitlement that had characterized her behavior for years began to fade, replaced by something approaching humility. I never really thought about what it must have been like for you, she admitted during one of our meetings to review the payment schedule. Working all those jobs while I was in classes, watching your friends graduate while you stayed behind. I guess I did not want to think about it, because then I would have had to acknowledge how much I owed you. It was not a full apology, but it was a start. a crack in the wall of entitlement she had built around herself. As I walked out of that meeting, I felt something I had not experienced in years: victory. Not just over Stephanie and my mother, but over the part of myself that had allowed their treatment for so long. I had reclaimed my power, my voice, and my future. And that was worth more than any dollar amount could ever represent. 6 months after Stephanie's graduation, my life had transformed in ways I could never have imagined. The heavy burden of supporting my sister had been lifted, and in its place was a growing sense of possibility and hope. I had enrolled in a business program at a local university, taking evening classes while continuing to work full-time. After years of helping someone else achieve their educational dreams, it was surreal to be sitting in a classroom pursuing my own. Each lecture felt like a gift. Each assignment a step toward the future I had deferred for so long. The first repayment check from Stephanie arrived exactly as scheduled. It was smaller than what we had agreed to in our payment plan, but it was something, a tangible acknowledgement of the debt she owed me. I deposited it directly into my education fund, completing a circle that felt both ironic and deeply satisfying. At work, my dedication and growing business knowledge had caught the attention of senior management. Amanda called me into her office one afternoon with unexpected news. The company has decided to implement a tuition assistance program for employees pursuing relevant degrees, she said with a smile that suggested this was not coincidental timing. As someone already enrolled in a business program, you would be eligible for up to $5,000 per year in educational support. I blinked back, tears, overwhelmed by this turn of events. That is incredibly generous. It is well-deserved, Amanda replied. And long overdue. You have been an asset to this company for years, Jessica. It is time we invested in your future the way you have invested in others. My relationship with Thomas had also evolved. With the financial pressure eased, we finally began planning our wedding. Nothing extravagant, but something genuine and joyful. A celebration of the partnership that had sustained me through the darkest times. How about next spring? Thomas suggested one evening as we looked through venue options. A fresh start in a new season. Perfect, I agreed, leaning against his shoulder. Absolutely perfect. My relationship with my mother remained complicated, but was slowly improving. After the initial confrontation, she had retreated into wounded silence, playing the victim in a situation she had helped create. But as weeks passed and she realized I was no longer going to be manipulated by guilt, her approach began to change. I might have been unfair to you, she admitted during a carefully neutral lunch meeting. I did put a lot of pressure on you to support Stephanie. It was not a full acknowledgement of her role in the dynamic, but like Stephanie's halting recognition, it was a start. The most surprising development was in my relationship with my sister. The entitled medical student who had dismissed me at her graduation was gradually being replaced by someone more thoughtful, more aware of her own privilege and the sacrifices that had made it possible. 3 months after our formal agreement, Stephanie asked if we could meet for coffee. I suggested a cafe halfway between her hospital and my office, curious but cautious about what she wanted to discuss. She arrived in scrubs, clearly coming directly from a shift. Dark circles under her eyes testifying to the grueling nature of residency. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old protective instinct, the desire to make things easier for her. But I reminded myself that growing through challenges was part of life, something I had learned the hard way. Thanks for meeting me, Stephanie said, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup. I know things have been weird between us. That is one way to put it, I replied with a small smile. She took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. I wanted to say I am sorry. Not just for what happened at graduation, but for everything. For taking you for granted all these years. For accepting your help without acknowledging what it cost you. For treating me like you were less important than me or my career. The apology I had waited years to hear, delivered without prompting or expectation. I felt a knot in my throat but remained silent, allowing her to continue. Residency is brutal, she said. I am working 80-hour weeks, sleeping in on-call rooms, dealing with life and death situations. And somehow, in the middle of all that chaos, I started thinking about you. About how you worked multiple jobs for years to support me. About how you never complained, even when I was being completely selfish. She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. You could have had all this years ago if you had not been supporting me. Your own degree, your own career advancement. And I never even said thank you. No, I agreed quietly. You never did. Well, I am saying it now. Thank you, Jessica. I would not be where I am without you. And I am so sorry it took me this long to recognize that. We talked for hours that day, really talked, in a way we had not since we were teenagers. She told me about the pressures of medical school, the competitive atmosphere that had hardened her, the insecurities she had hidden beneath a veneer of entitlement. I shared how isolated I had felt during those years, how watching her move forward while I stood still had created a well of resentment I had not wanted to acknowledge. I was jealous too, she confessed. Of how much Mom and Dad loved you. Of how responsible and together you always seemed. I kept waiting for you to fall apart or fail at something, just so I would not feel so inadequate next to you. Inadequate? I laughed in surprise. Stephanie, you were the golden child. The future doctor. I was just the reliable one in the background. That is not how I saw it, she replied. You were the one who held everything together when Dad left. You were the one Mom counted on. I was just the one everyone expected things from. It was a perspective I had never considered. A reminder that even within the same family, we all experience our shared reality differently. Our relationship would never be what it once was. Before college and medical school and the years of imbalance. Too much had happened, too many words had been spoken that could not be taken back. But perhaps we could build something new. Something based on mutual respect rather than obligation and entitlement. Alicia, who had been my steadfast supporter through everything, was skeptical when I told her about Stephanie's apology. People do not change that easily, she warned. Do not let her pull you back into the same old patterns. I will not, I promised. This is not about forgetting what happened or pretending it did not hurt. It is about moving forward with better boundaries. Thomas was more optimistic, having witnessed Stephanie's genuine remorse firsthand. Sometimes it takes losing something to realize its value, he said. Maybe she had to feel what it was like without your support to understand what she had all along. The true test came 3 months later, when we gathered for a family dinner at a neutral restaurant. Mom was there, still somewhat frosty but making an effort. Stephanie brought her boyfriend William, who was far more personable when not surrounded by celebrating medical students. Thomas sat beside me, a solid presence of support. The dynamic was noticeably different. When Mom began her usual pattern of praising Stephanie while overlooking my contributions, Stephanie herself interrupted. Actually, Mom, Jessica has some exciting news too. She is acing her business classes, right, Jess? It was a small moment, but significant, a deliberate rebalancing of attention, an acknowledgement that my achievements deserved recognition too. Mom looked momentarily confused, then nodded. That is wonderful, Jessica. I always knew you were smart. Thanks, Mom, I replied, squeezing Thomas's hand under the table. It feels good to finally be pursuing my own dreams. As the months passed, I continued to build a life focused on my own goals rather than supporting others. I excelled in my classes, began saving for a house with Thomas, and even started a small side business consulting for local companies. Stephanie's checks arrived regularly, though occasionally late. Our relationship continued to evolve, finding a new equilibrium based on mutual respect rather than the unbalanced dynamic of the past. The most profound change, however, was within myself. The people-pleaser who had sacrificed her own dreams to make others happy had been replaced by someone who understood her own worth, who could set boundaries and hold others accountable for their treatment of her. You know what I realized? I told Thomas one evening as we sat on the balcony of our new apartment, watching the sunset. The difference between sacrifice and self-erasure. Sacrifice is a choice made from love and strength. Self-erasure is the belief that your needs do not matter as much as everyone else's. I confused the two for a very long time. And now, he asked, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. Now I know that loving others does not have to mean diminishing myself. that I can be generous without being a doormat, that my dreams matter just as much as anyone else's. In my first business management class, I felt a profound sense of belonging I had never experienced before. Sitting among other students, contributing to discussions, challenging myself intellectually, it was everything I had given up and finally reclaimed. I looked around at my classmates, wondering if any of them had traveled a similar path to reach this classroom. How many had deferred their dreams to support others? How many had struggled to find their voice and assert their worth? As the professor discussed leadership principles, I found myself thinking about my journey and the unexpected lesson it had taught me. Sometimes the greatest act of leadership is leading yourself out of patterns that diminish you. Sometimes the most important person to stand up for is yourself. Have you ever sacrificed your own dreams to support someone else? Did they appreciate your sacrifice? Or take it for granted like my sister did? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more about my journey to reclaiming my life and pursuing my own dreams. And remember, sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is permission to put yourself first. Thank you for listening. And I wish you the strength to stand up for your worth in whatever situation you find yourself.